You ever notice how some relationships don't fall apart during the hard times? They fall apart right after the good times. You'll have an amazing weekend, great conversations, warm affection, that feeling like, finally, this is what it's supposed to be. Then you wake up and the temperature in the room is different. She's quiet, short answers. Her eyes don't meet yours the same way. You ask, "Are we okay?" And suddenly you're in an interrogation you didn't prepare for. Why did you take so long to text back yesterday? Who was that girl who liked your post? Do you actually love me, or are you just here? Don't lie to me. And what confuses you is that nothing happened. There wasn't betrayal. There wasn't disrespect. There wasn't even an argument. It's like the relationship is allergic to peace. If you've lived this, you know how disorienting it is. Because you're not dealing with one problem, you're dealing with a pattern. A repeating loop where closeness triggers conflict, stability triggers suspicion, and reassurance only buys you a short window before the next test begins. Today I want to give language to what might be happening beneath the surface, without villainizing anyone and without excusing bad behavior. Because sometimes what looks like she's impossible is actually a very specific attachment injury, an unhealed father wound, or more broadly, a long-term wound around male safety and reliability. And if you don't recognize the pattern, you will spend months, sometimes years, trying to prove yourself in a game where the rules keep changing. This video will help you spot the cycle early, understand why the tests happen, hold boundaries without becoming cold, tell the difference between someone healing and someone looping, decide what's actually healthy for you. Let's start at the real beginning, not when you met her, but when her nervous system learned what love from a man feels like. A father wound isn't a trendy insult. It's not a label to mock somebody. It's a shorthand for a childhood experience where the primary male figure, often the father, sometimes a stepfather, grandfather, or caretaker, was not emotionally reliable. That unreliability can look like a lot of different things. He wasn't there physically. Absence, separation, abandonment. He was around, but emotionally unavailable. Present body, absent heart. He was loving sometimes and harsh other times. Inconsistency. He was critical, hard to please, or withheld approval. He was addicted, distracted, depressed, or checked out. He made the child feel like love must be earned. He created fear instead of safety. Anger, intimidation, instability. And the key point is this. A child doesn't interpret these things as, "Dad has issues." A child interprets it as, "Love from men is unpredictable. I have to work for it. It can disappear. And if it disappears, it will hurt." That lesson doesn't stay in her thoughts. It becomes encoded in her body, in her stress response, her attachment style, her instincts during intimacy, and the way she reacts when she feels vulnerable. So when you show up as a grown man who seems stable, consistent, and emotionally available, you might think you're offering relief. But her nervous system might experience it as something else. This can't be real. This won't last. If I relax, I'll get blindsided. Which leads to the core contradiction of this dynamic. She may crave stability and still panic when it arrives. Here's a hard truth about human psychology. We don't automatically chase what's healthy. We chase what's familiar. If someone grew up with inconsistent love, their nervous system may interpret consistency as suspicious. Not because they're stupid, not because they want drama, but because their internal map of love includes tension. For them, love didn't feel like calm. It felt like waiting, guessing, performing, bracing for disappointment, scanning for signs something is about to change. So when calm shows up, when you're steady, kind, predictable, it can trigger an internal alarm. Why isn't there tension? Where's the catch? What am I missing? And once the alarm is on, the mind starts searching for a reason. It will zoom in on something, anything, to justify the anxiety. A delayed reply, a different tone, a day you're tired, a boundary you set. Now from your side it can feel ridiculous, like you're being judged for normal human behavior. From her side it can feel like survival, like she's catching the danger early before it catches her. So she tests, not because she enjoys it, but because uncertainty is unbearable, and testing creates temporary certainty, even if the certainty is negative. That's how you end up in a relationship where the biggest fights happen right after the best moments, because closeness increases vulnerability. Vulnerability activates fear, and fear demands control. Let's talk about these tests, because testing can sound like a conscious strategy, like she's plotting. Often it's not that calculated. It's more like a reflex. Here are common tests you might recognize. 1. The withdrawal test. She goes cold after intimacy, emotionally or physically. She wants to see if you chase, panic, beg, or get angry. If you chase, she feels desired, but also overwhelmed. If you don't chase, she feels abandoned. You can't win by instinct. You can only win with clarity. 2. The jealousy test. She creates a scenario where you could feel insecure. Mentions an ex, talks about being hit on, posts something provocative, brings up other options. Sometimes it's a way to ask, "Do I matter to you?" Sometimes it's a way to regain power if she feels emotionally exposed. 3. The boundary break test. You say, calmly, "I'm not okay with being yelled at," or "I need an hour to cool down," or "I'm going to see my friends tonight." And she escalates. Not necessarily because she wants to control you, but because boundaries can feel like distance, and distance can feel like abandonment. So the wound tries to destroy the boundary to restore closeness. 4. The impossible standard test. No matter what you do, it's not quite enough. You comfort her. Why didn't you do it sooner? You plan a date. Why wasn't it more thoughtful? You apologize. Why aren't you apologizing the right way? The point of the test isn't improvement. The point is to keep the relationship in a state where she never has to fully relax into trust. 5. The confession trap. She asks questions that don't have safe answers. Do you think she's prettier than me? Would you cheat if you knew you wouldn't get caught? Are you sure you want me forever? Answer wrong and you're guilty. Answer right and she may assume you're lying. Because fear doesn't want truth. Fear wants certainty, and certainty often comes through conflict. Here's one of the strangest parts of this dynamic. For some people, with early attachment wounds, arguments become a form of emotional regulation. When things are calm, they don't feel calm, they feel exposed. Calm can feel like standing in an open field with no armor. Conflict, as destructive as it is, can feel oddly familiar. It gives structure, it gives roles. Attacker/defender, chaser/runner. It narrows focus. It creates intensity, which feels like realness. It confirms the internal belief, see, this always happens. So after a beautiful weekend, a fight can unconsciously restore the emotional environment her nervous system knows how to survive inside. You're thinking, why are we doing this? Her nervous system is thinking, okay, now it makes sense again. And that's why you might see deep connection to sudden criticism, affection to sudden suspicion, closeness to sudden emotional distance, progress to sudden sabotage. This can leave you feeling like you're living with two different people, the woman who's soft and loving, and the woman who's sharp and distrustful. It's often the same woman, just different states of safety. Another common injury that comes from inconsistent fathering is a warped relationship with validation. If a girl doesn't consistently receive safe approval and emotional presence from her father, she may grow up learning, I have value when I'm wanted. I'm safe when I'm chosen. I'm real when I'm desired. So attention becomes a substitute for connection. And to be clear, this does not mean she's bad. It means she learned to survive emotionally with the tools available. But in adult relationships, this can create painful patterns. Intimacy becomes proof. Physical closeness becomes a way to confirm worth. So sex isn't just sex, it's reassurance. Which means a small shift in your desire, stress, fatigue, life, can feel to her like a major threat. You don't want me becomes, you don't love me becomes, you're going to leave. Make-up intimacy replaces repair. After a fight, she may want closeness quickly, touch, sex, affection, and you might feel relief. We're good again. But if no real repair happens, no accountability, no changed behavior, the same fight returns later. Because intimacy can soothe the nervous system, but it doesn't resolve the underlying wound. So you end up cycling, blow up to make up, to temporary peace, to trigger to blow up again. And you start confusing intensity with progress. One of the most painful things in these relationships is the gap between what she says and what keeps happening. She might say, "I know I have issues. I'm sorry, I'll work on it. I've never felt this safe before. I don't want to be like this." And she might mean it, truly, while she's calm. But then the trigger hits, the fear rises, and the old program takes over. This is where a lot of men get trapped, because the remorse sounds sincere, and the good moments feel so real, you keep investing. So here's a rule that protects your life. Intentions are meaningful. Patterns are decisive. A person can love you and still be unsafe for you. A person can cry and still repeat the same harm. A person can have trauma and still be responsible for managing it. So when you're deciding whether to stay, don't measure her sweetest moments. Measure her repeated behaviors under stress, because that's your future. Now we have to talk about your side, because these dynamics don't become long-term unless they hook into something in you. A lot of men who stay in these relationships have a hidden belief like, if I love harder, she'll relax. If I prove myself enough, she'll trust. If I just stay stable, she'll heal. If I can get us back to the beginning, everything will work. That's the rescuer mindset, and it usually comes from your own wound. You feel valuable when you're needed. You fear being seen as replaceable. You equate endurance with love. You confuse self-sacrifice with commitment. You learned to earn love through performance. So her chaos gives you a role, a mission, a purpose. And when it's good, it feels like you did it. But when it's bad, you feel responsible, like you failed. That creates addiction. You keep trying to win back the good version of her, the version you met at the start. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If you stay in a cycle where disrespect, volatility, and boundary breaking are repeatedly forgiven, you're not stabilizing the relationship, you're stabilizing the pattern. Love without limits doesn't heal attachment wounds. It often trains them. Another confusing piece. Sometimes a woman with this wound has a history of choosing men who can't fully show up. Not always, but often enough that it becomes a pattern. Why? Because emotional unavailability feels familiar. The hard-to-get guy creates the same nervous system activation she experienced as a child. Longing, uncertainty, chasing, proving worth, trying to win love. And that activation can be misread as chemistry. So stable love can feel boring, not because stability is boring, but because her system equates intensity with attachment. This is why you might feel like you're in a rigged game. If you stay calm, she suspects you. If you become reactive, you feed the chaos. If you pull away, she panics. If you lean in, she feels swallowed. So what do? You stop playing by emotion and start playing by principles. Boundaries, consistency, and real standards for repair. If you want one clarity tool that cuts through confusion, it's this. Pay attention to how she responds to boundaries. Healthy people may not love your boundaries, but they can respect them. Someone with an active attachment wound may interpret boundaries as rejection. So when you say, "Don't talk to me like that. I'm going to take space and we'll talk in an hour. I'm not comfortable with this." No. She may respond with rage, sarcasm, tears that turn into pressure, threats of leaving, accusations. "You don't love me." Escalation until you give in. And here's what that tells you. This isn't about the specific boundary. It's about whether she can tolerate you being a whole person. A relationship requires two whole adults. If she needs you to shrink to keep her calm, the relationship will slowly erase you. So your job is not to set boundaries aggressively. Your job is to set them clearly and then watch what happens next. Because a boundary that isn't enforced becomes a request. And repeated requests teach someone they can ignore you. I don't want this video to leave you cynical. People heal, patterns can change, father wounds can become wisdom. But healing has requirements. Here are the big ones. 1. She acknowledges the pattern without making you the enemy. Not, you're triggering me, so you need to change. But, I get activated, and I'm responsible for what I do when I'm activated. 2. She takes accountability that is behavioral. Real accountability sounds like, I raised my voice, that's not okay. I accused you without evidence, I'm sorry. Next time I feel that panic, I will take a break instead of escalating. And then you see it happen. 3. She has structure, not just self-awareness. A lot of people can name their trauma. That's not healing, that's narration. Structure looks like therapy, and not just I went once. Consistent work over time, journaling, attachment education, somatic practices, accountability, support group, coaching, trusted mentors, real tools for conflict and repair. If she says she's working on herself, it's fair to ask gently, what does that look like day to day? 4. She can tolerate stability without sabotaging it. This is huge. Healing often looks boring from the outside. Fewer blow-ups, fewer tests, more calm conversations, more repair attempts, more patience. If calm makes her itch and she refuses to build tolerance for it, the cycle will keep returning. 5. You also do your work. If you're drawn to chaos, you need to get honest. Not to blame yourself, but to free yourself. Because if you don't understand why you stay, you'll keep meeting the same relationship in different bodies. Now let's talk practically. If you're in this right now, you're probably asking, do I keep trying or do I leave? There isn't one answer for everyone, but there are clarity questions. Consider staying with strong boundaries if she consistently owns her behavior, she apologizes without blaming, she takes action, not just words. Conflict is getting less intense and less frequent. You feel safer over time, not smaller over time. Your boundaries are respected more and more. Consider pausing or stepping back if she says the right things but repeats the same harm. Every boundary becomes a crisis. You're walking on eggshells constantly. The relationship is consuming your energy and identity. The good times feel like relief, not peace. Consider leaving if there's emotional abuse, threats, intimidation, coercion, or violence. You're repeatedly being punished for having needs. She weaponizes vulnerability to control you. She refuses any accountability or help. You've become a caretaker instead of a partner. You can feel your mental health deteriorating. And I want to be very clear about something. You can have compassion for someone's pain and still choose distance. Understanding the origin of a behavior does not require you to absorb the impact of it. Her wound may explain the pattern. It does not make the pattern acceptable. If you want a grounded approach, here's a simple framework. 1. Don't argue with fear. When someone is activated, logic rarely lands. Instead of, you're being irrational, try, I can see you're feeling unsafe right now. That doesn't mean you accept accusations, it means you acknowledge emotion. 2. Validate feelings, not accusations. Example, I get that you're scared. I'm not okay with being accused of cheating. 3. Hold the boundary, calmly. I'm happy to talk when we can speak respectfully. Then actually follow through. 4. Reward repair, not chaos. If she calms down and returns to talk like an adult, show up fully. If she escalates, disengage. Over time you reinforce. Peace gets connection, chaos gets distance. 5. Watch for progress, not perfection. Healing isn't linear, but it is visible. If months go by and nothing changes, that's also visible. If you've been in one of these relationships, you know the pain isn't just the fighting. It's the confusion. It's the way you can go from feeling chosen to feeling suspected in the same day. It's the way you can love someone deeply and still feel like you're slowly disappearing. It's the way you can do everything right and still end up on trial. So here's what I want you to remember. A wounded attachment system will often recreate the original injury, not because it enjoys suffering, but because it's trying to gain control over what once felt uncontrollable. That can look like testing, It can look like sabotage. It can look like pushing love away right when it arrives. Some people face that pattern and do the work, real work, and become incredible partners with depth, humility, and skill. And some people stay inside the pattern, explain it, defend it, and repeat it. Your job is not to diagnose. Your job is not to rescue. Your job is to protect your peace while paying attention to evidence. Because some tests aren't designed to confirm love. Some tests are designed to keep you proving yourself forever. If you've experienced this, you're not crazy, and you're not alone.